my achievements, have to look up in the rafters for banners. Less of a dying breed, blame it on my ancestors. 2 sets ahead, I'm playing chess while you playing checkers.
Welcome everyone to episode 6. A little bit of a different setting here, as you can see. Took the podcast on the road. I have here my good friend Justin Wight. Lots of things to say about him, but I'll wait until we get into it. If you want to just give the people a little bit of a career backstory before we get into what you're doing now, give them an idea of kind of what led you here, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Starting in, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for flying all the way out here for this podcast. Who are we sponsored by? We got to thank your sponsors.
Oh, no sponsors yet. Open field.
All right.
Hopefully Mango Tango.
There you go. Mango Tango sponsorship. Thank you, Cayman Islands Brewery. I guess starting from career backgrounds, both my parents own their own businesses. So you kind of learn how to run a business just because they ask you for help all the time.
Yeah.
And they're constantly, when you own your own business, you're nonstop, like it's not 9 to 5. You're just on it all the time.
Right.
Excuse me. So, you learn the tricks of the trade. We were lucky enough to have a boat growing up, and we like to go fishing and all that stuff. So that stuff costs money. And we learned that, gas is expensive in the Cayman Islands, and you need bait and fishing gear and all that. So we were like, all right, how are we going to fund our trips? So in high school, we were selling candy to people. To kids at school.
And by we, he means me and him.
Well, yeah, there was a few.
And others.
So that's how it started until it was shut down pretty quickly by the school.
Couple suspensions.
No. I was a very good student in high school. And I guess that was the start of it. And then graduating high school, I obviously worked for both my parents too. And by worked, I mean like borderline, minimum wage, working in the warehouse / doing whatever they need me to do.
And your mom did what again?
She has a couple souvenir stores on the cruise ship terminal. So she sells souvenirs to tourists that come off the cruise ships. And my dad distributes 3M and Rubbermaid products. 3M's a pretty broad company. They do stuff from like marine to office supply.
Right.
And he's got a few warehouses that don't have AC. And you get pallets and pallets of boxes that you have to unload and put away and deliver to
right
retailers that sell them to everybody on island.
And then your mom's shops are in the cruise ship port.
Yeah.
I think most of your time was spent selling the snow cones, right?
I started selling snow cones and drinks outside of my mom's store. It was like a small awning. Rented a machine and went to the grocery store and bought all the supplies. Obviously, at that point, you're just starting, so you're trying to keep costs low. At the end of the day, you're making like $50, $100. That's a good day for someone out of high school.
And then as you became more business savvy, you decided to delegate to me into the hot sun and take a cut.
Yeah, you just send them out there, and slave away in the sun. But that was actually further on because it wasn't until we moved out, the security guard, I think, felt bad for me standing out there, like, sitting out there all day and not making any money. He's like, how about you try moving your stand? Like, by stand, I mean a table, out to the middle of the port. And so when we did that, it really picked up. And then you learn about supply and demand, like, oh, we need to get more syrup because, you're going to go through more than 2 bottles in a day and you need more ice. And maybe renting the machine isn't the greatest idea because they need their machine back by this time. And, so you learn things as you go. And it was picking up. And then as it's going, both my parents were like, yo, you need to go to university. I was like, oh, I'm good, man. I'm selling snow cones.
I got it all figured out.
Got to figure it out. I'm selling snow cones and drinks to tourists. but it's still operating today. I don't do it as my full-time job. Really, I like passed it off to my mom because it makes more sense for her to kind of operate those, as they're all like intertwined within her businesses, under her license and all that. So I help out. She calls me maybe once a week and says, "Hey, I need you to pick up 10 cases of water and grab this and that." It's like, okay, cool. Run on a lunch break or something to drop stuff there. But
so that's kind of where your business savvy kind of starts, right? Both your parents having their own businesses and kind of dabbling in them. And then from there, you did go off to university, right?
Yeah. I went to North Central College. It's a small D3 school in Illinois, in Naperville. My mom's from Chicago, so I got offered a scholarship for baseball to another university, but my mom and my aunt went out there over the summer to check it out, and they were like, "You're not going here. It's way out in the boonies." And it was like, anyway, that was another side story. They were on their way home, and they were like, "Oh, this is a beautiful university. You should go here." So then I submitted my application, and then they accepted me. It was a private school, so it was very expensive. So while I was away, like, luckily here we have a government scholarship for Caymanians, which is amazing.
Right.
But it doesn't cover everything if you go to, the United States, where the education is quite expensive, especially for a private school, non-resident.
And did you walk onto that baseball team because you came to it later, or?
Yeah, I walked on, and I think, I don't know, that was tough because here, like, sports kind of drop at like 15, so I hadn't really played baseball for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
So, but that was my passion growing up. It was like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a baseball player, and that's what my mind was set on. So I tried it again, did like 3 years, 2 years and a half. I got into a little bit of trouble my freshman year, but everything kind of happens for a reason. I feel like that was a tipping point for me, because it's like, university, coming from here, you're making money, and you go back to school, and it's just like, it was almost like going back in time, because here, like, the drinking age is 18,
right.
So you start drinking a little bit earlier, and by the time you're 18, 19, you're kind of almost over it, because like,
you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, the fun is gone, and it is what it is. But I was focused on sports, and alcohol and sports don't really kind of, if you want to be good, they don't go together.
For sure. So
I went up there, and it's like, "Oh, you're not allowed to drink anymore." And it's like, okay, well, watch me. But at college, like, that's what you do. You're going to parties and you're having fun. And I was up to like, it was like 255 pounds, I think, when we had to do our shoot, for baseball, and you're in your suit, and like, you've got your suit on and your tie, and they do your specs. It's like, okay, stand on the scale. That was when I was like,
whoa,
255 pounds. All right, 6'2". That's a tank right there. But yeah, I won't get into the trouble, but it was just like an eye-opening experience for me.
Right. Kind of righted the ship a little bit.
Yeah, I had to do a fair bit of community service. My aunt worked at a law firm at the time, so she was able to kind of get me out of trouble. Just for the record, I'm not like, it wasn't like anything physical or anything. I just got arrested for, you know what, we're going to talk about it. Just because I feel like everybody's going to judge me now.
Now you need to clarify.
All right. We went out to drink at a party, and my friend was on antibiotics, so he didn't drink, and he was our designated driver. And at the time, there was 3 of us living in a room. And we had come home, and we had like went to Taco Bell and ordered pizza, and we were playing like Super Mario Smash Bros all night, like drinking water, not drinking anymore, and then it was 2 of us and like people on our floor, and then our roommate called at like, I don't know, 12:30 in the morning. He's like, "Oh, I need a ride." It's like, my friend or our roommate had gone to sleep, and I was like, I can go and get him. It's been like 4 hours.
Right.
And went to go get him. Didn't answer his phone. I was like, I'm not waiting for this idiot. So I was on my way home on private neighborhood roads. There's nobody out there except me.
Yeah.
And I didn't come to a full stop at the four-way. And there was a police like in the train station, and he saw me not come to a full stop, and he's like, oh, like pulled me over. And yeah, I did the sobriety test, walk forwards, backwards, alphabet forwards and backwards, standing on one leg, this, that, like all of it. And he's like, oh yeah, you need to blow. And I was like, blew. And he's like, oh, you blew like 0.081. So like just over the limit.
Thanks for that reenactment of the blow.
Yeah. But yeah, there was like alcohol in the car. I had a fake ID, which is a felony in the States. So my aunt.
How old are you at this time?
I think I was 19.
Okay.
And I was like, I remember going to the police station, and first of all, we're at the light or at the stop sign, and I was like, I could see my dorm, like it was literally right there. Like at my first glance was like, this isn't my car. I could just get out and run into the dorm, and they would never find me because they need access code and da.
Right.
I was like, not the right decision. Anyway, I was on my way to the police station, and I'm like crying, like growing up here, or a small island, I was really good at baseball, and a lot of kids like looked up to me,
right.
So it's like, you are a role model for kids playing that sport, and you go away and you're getting arrested. You're not going to be playing on the baseball team. Like all these things are running through my head.
Right.
And they felt bad for me, so they let me blow again at the station, and I was still like 0.081. And then, I called everybody on my phone except for my family because I didn't want to have to explain that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that I did get kicked off the baseball team, and I feel like that for me was the slap in the face that I needed, because like you're here, you're making money, you're living at your parents' house, like party life, go away, get in trouble, off the baseball team. That summer, I had to do, I can't remember how many hours of community service, but it was a lot.
I feel like I remember this.
Yeah, it was at a Habitat for Humanity, like a restore. So my job was to go and collect, like if someone was refurbishing their apartment or their house or an office, we had to take their refrigerators and all their cabinets and all the things that they didn't want, load it into a big moving van, load it up, take it to the shop, and they sold all of that stuff. And
is Habitat for Humanity where you dragged me to on the Chicago trip?
Maybe. No, I don't know.
When we were looking for stuff for Eric's house?
Oh, yes. yeah. That was one of the stops. Yeah. At like a thriftish store, but like for home supplies.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. And we didn't find what we were looking for. But it was worth the look. But yeah, that was so
that was sort of an eye-opening experience for you.
Yeah. But for that, like I'd get up. My poor grandma had to drive me to that. And I was like, look, at first they're like, our opening hours are from 8 till whatever. And after like a few days of working there, I was like, no. George is there at 5 a.m. I was like, he can sign my form saying that I'm there, and I can get some hours, like 3 extra hours in. So she would drive me there and drop me like 5 a.m. I'm like sorting the store with the supervisor. And then I think they closed at like 2, and she came pick me up, and then I'd go to the gym, and then I would always finish with a run. Like literally every day would just go for a run. That was like my like meditation almost.
Right, yeah.
And just like after a workout, just really push it as far as you could, running through the cornfields of Illinois. And then would go to baseball practice. I was playing for a summer team.
Okay.
It's not affiliated with my university.
Yeah.
And
were you at that time, was your goal still, okay, I'm going to play this here and then I'll make my way back onto a team somewhere?
Well, like walking on, like the coaches were like, who is this kid? I hadn't picked up a baseball in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Like throwing really not much out there.
Busy throwing mangoes at my poor legs instead.
But it just wasn't clicking, So like, who is this kid? And for me, being told that you can't do something is almost like the greatest motivation.
Yeah.
For me anyway, it's like, oh yeah, watch me do it. So
Yeah.
the whole summer was just dedicated to getting back on the baseball team. And when I came back for that same sophomore photo, 215, like
Shredded.
really jacked, and was like shutting people down. You know, I was a different person, but also like mentally too, because I started working as well to try and, you know, alleviate some of the legal costs and just kind of
Yeah.
help out for the loss that I've created for my family. And it really was a turning point, because then it's like 5 a.m. training, then go to school, come back to practice,
Yeah.
then go to work, and then come home and do your homework and all that. It was just like, it was a full on 6 days a week job.
Right.
And serving and bartending, here you get like auto grats. They're not necessarily the same. So it's like, you have to be personable. You have to like speak to your people to kind of make a relationship in a way, get some regulars to make money, because the minimum wage was like nothing.
Yeah.
You know, when you're a server, you don't get paid
The same minimum wage, yeah, it's lower.
Yeah. So it was tough. But it was also good money when you got good shifts. And then once you started bartending, it was actually a lot better money. So that's what I did through there. And then playing sports, I was like reffing and organizing rec leagues that I mentioned before, but it was fun. The dorm I lived in, they housed all the recreational events in the winter. So it was like, you literally like pop your head out and you just see what sport's going on. You just jump in. It was fun.
Right. So I guess fair to say that whole kind of situation taught you how to be disciplined just by chance, because if you really wanted to get back on the team, you were going to have to change a lot of what you were doing.
Yeah.
Kind of gives you a flash in the pan of like, you're not superhuman for the first time, you know, like, oh, fuck, I really fucked this one up. I don't know if there's coming back or not.
Yeah. And more importantly, I think I realized the importance of trust. So I told my coach, you know, like my roommate was smoking weed, and the campus police came in earlier that year and they were like, hey, you know, we smell weed in here, da da da. And my coach was like, hey, you know, if you do it, just let me know. And I was like, nope, no, not for me, da da da. And then when the part of the whole ticket thing was that my roommate that wasn't drinking, obviously he wasn't drinking, but he was able to smoke. So like he was like, you know, paranoid high. He's like, I'm not taking this into our dorm. It's gonna smell. Da da da. Can I leave it in your car? So that was like 2 of my other tickets was paraphernalia and possession of marijuana. So then obviously when they found out, you know, about the arrest, they were like, you lied to us. And I never regained my coach's trust after that. So obviously you're not getting playing time, and, you know, there's just, for me, all the investment in training and the gym and all of that, it just wasn't worth it. And I was playing rugby for a club team, like an hour or so, the Chicago Blaze, and I was training like once or twice a week for maybe an hour and a half.
Right.
And they were like, this kid's good. You know, we want him to play on our D1 team at this position, and then we want him to play the D3 team at like a fly half, which I'd never played before, but they're like, you could hack it. So it's like, learn some new skills, never really kicked balls before. So I had to practice a bunch of new things. But to me, it was like, okay, in terms of your return on your investment, baseball was requiring like 3 hours of my time at least every day, and I wasn't really playing.
Yeah.
And rugby was about, you know, 3 hours of my time, you know, minus the drive back and forth driving. And on the weekend I was a hero, you know, like playing D3 then playing D1, and everybody you know, like, so it's like, when you look at that from a time perspective, you know, it's like, okay, look at your time. Baseball's not giving you anything. Rugby is giving you some, you know, fun and recognition. Yeah. And then you're not getting paid for baseball. So
was that kind of the turning point for you when you went transitioning from baseball to rugby, kind of foolish time? Is that time period?
Playing here, baseball fell off at like 15 years old, so there was no more. It was like,
Yeah, but you like what you said when you went away, you kind of still had a dream of maybe playing baseball at a higher level. Was when you started playing rugby there kind of the end of that?
yeah, I guess. Another story that, so when I was playing in that summer league, it was, you kind of brush shoulders with people that were like either had played professional or were trying to play professional. Like
Okay.
it wasn't a professional league by any means. But like if someone was injured and needed to get some reps in, like they would come and play. So like I remember one time there was a guy on our team who was like AAA or AA at the White Sox, and he needed to get some reps in because he blew his arm out and was coming back from his recovery or whatever. And I remember playing a team that had scouts out there to watch someone else play, and I actually pitched better than he did. So the following week, the scouts came back out, but it was my friend's birthday, and we went out the night before, and I was in no shape to be playing any kind of baseball, and I had messaged to like, look, if we need numbers, like I can play in the outfield or something, like, or, you know, wherever you need me to, but I'm not going to be much of a help.
Pitching.
Anything.
Oh, okay.
Just like, you know, I have my body on the field.
Yeah.
I might feel better in the afternoon, but not great. And I'm not driving, so you have to come pick me up. So went out there. They're like, oh, we want to see this guy throw through. I think I hit 2 batters and like walked a few guys, and I was like, well, there goes that opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, that was tough because when you sit back and reflect on it, it's that's the moment that you like dream of, and you blew it.
Right.
because of a one night party, you know. And was it worth it in the grand scheme of things? No. Was
Right.
it a good night? Yeah. But when you weigh those things up, it's like you reflect on things that my mom always used to tell me is like, you have one shot at your first impression.
Yeah.
You know, and if you ruin that, like that's someone's impression of you, you know. So
But do you think those kinds of things shaped your ability to take advantage of those going forward? Like, did they really resonate with you? Like, damn, I really blew that one. I'm not going to do that again.
yeah, I don't know. I tried to come back my junior year of baseball, and I still wasn't like impressing my coaches. Funnily enough, my coach from the team that offered a scholarship moved from that college to where I was at, and he was trying to encourage me to stop pitching because he was like, your strength is in your hitting. And hitting in baseball is like one of the hardest things you can do.
For sure.
You know, and at this point it was like 4 or 5 years since I've like hit a live pitch, you know. So I was like, look, like I'm 2.5 years into this, like I'm not like, no, you know. And in hindsight again, like he was a coach that worked with Alex Rodriguez, and like, so he recognized talent,
Right.
and I didn't listen to him. So again, I'm pretty self-reflective. So for me, it was like, looking back on it now, I was like, you're an idiot. You know, like this guy left where he was to come and like coach at the school that you were at, and you still didn't, you know, take on his instruction after he like was here in the Cayman Islands, recognized you, offered you a scholarship to come to his university to play baseball. And then he came to your school where you were and was trying to reach out for free,
Yeah.
you know, and offer his assistance, and you just said no. You know, like looking back on that is like really dumb, because that's someone who's putting themselves out there,
For sure.
and you just turned it down, you know. So
But I feel like later in life that makes you a little bit more receptive to people and not be so hard-headed. Like both of us were pretty hard-headed when we were young.
yeah, I'm probably still a little hard-headed.
But I mean, you learn from those things, and you at least become a little bit more receptive to
Yeah.
newer opportunities, right? Like maybe you wouldn't
Mhm.
have been receptive to certain things in your life that turned out good now, that if that had happened the way you wanted it to, maybe you would have stayed being more hard-headed.
Yeah. I think that's a large in part reason why I'm teaching now.
Why don't we get into that too? Like, so you finished college there. You got a degree, correct?
Yeah, I was a double major in sports management and business management.
Okay.
And I did a minor in coaching. And then while I was there, I actually studied to be a personal trainer and got my National Federation of Personal Training, NFPT.
So you get your degrees, you get the certs. Then how long was it till you came back to Cayman after that?
So I thought that I wanted to go back and continue bartending because it was quite fun.
Great idea.
And I went back up there and kind of closed out the one season. And then when winter approached, I think I came back here actually for Christmas. And when I went back to Chicago and the winter sets in and it's like cold and miserable, I was like, you know what? I can't do this again. So I moved back home and started working at the rugby club as a sports development or youth development manager, coaching the youth rugby in school national team, like for under 19 and all the youth teams in the community program here.
Yep.
Which was fun. And I was playing rugby too. So it was like, oh yeah, gung ho, like wake up, go to the gym, coach rugby all day, come home, play rugby.
Were you playing for the national team at that point?
Yeah. 15s and 7s. And we were doing a lot of traveling. So obviously working at the rugby club and requesting national leave for rugby, it was very
pretty
easy. So yeah. It worked out really well, but the pay wasn't great. And it got very redundant. Is like all of it was rugby. So after like 3 years, one of my teammates was working at another school at CCC teaching PE. And I was like, that would be really cool, because then at least you get some variation in sport. You're still teaching sport,
yeah.
But so I enrolled in the postgraduate certificate at the University College of the Cayman Islands to get my teaching degree, and started teaching at CCC. And during that time, I also ended up getting someone pregnant and having a baby. And then because it was a religious affiliated school, they found out I was having a baby out of wedlock.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And they were like, oh, well, unless you're getting married to this woman, they don't really know. I know you have a child with her, but we're not going to renew your contract.
And for context, in Cayman, a lot of the schools are religious. It's a pretty religious-based island, so much of the private schools are Christian or Catholic, so not uncommon. But I don't know if I've ever heard of that much scope being looked into in terms of like having a baby out of wedlock.
Yeah, to be fair, like you're a new dad, and I was really excited that I had a child, so I took her to school. In hindsight, they might have not known,
right?
And I might have got a new contract, or at least for another year until they found out. But because I didn't have a contract signed, they didn't actually fire me.
Right.
So they just didn't renew my contract, but they didn't let me know until like 2 days before I was supposed to come back home to start teaching the next year, which was
potentially could be somewhat career saving though that you didn't get fired. Wouldn't have been great at the time, but probably helped you move on to your next school and not have been being fired.
But even before that, I got my real estate license, and so that's where I transitioned into selling real estate.
Right. So did you just end up taking real estate full time once that CCC gig kind of diminished?
Yep, and still, the snow cones thing was still running, so I was running that and trying to get the real estate thing off the ground. But I kind of really got into real estate because my mom wanted to sell her place.
Just an easy start there. And
yeah. So I got my real estate license and then sold her place, and then was just kind of in that field for a little while.
So question about when you were working CCC, right? Were you doing that? Like, were you working Triple C and thinking, okay, I want to start business at some point still, but I'm going to do this in the meantime? Were you like, I really enjoy teaching, so I'm going to do this here and I'll dabble into business on the side? Like, what was your thought process when you went into teaching?
At the time, it was just like I was burnt out of just teaching rugby.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where I didn't want to go to my own practice because I had just been dealing with rugby all day, and
Right.
it is very hot here. And it's like you're in the sun all day, you're running around all day.
But was like, was getting back into business always part of the plan while you were doing the teaching at the rugby and at Triple C?
To be honest, at that point, I didn't really have a plan. You know, it was just like
Day to
kind
day, yeah.
of going with the flow. That's kind of been my motto my whole life. Just roll with it, you know. Whatever happens, and that's kind of the path. Things fall in front of you, and you make decisions, and you kind of just grow with that. But
Right.
it's only till I've gotten older that I've started making actual plans. Really, since having Riley, you kind of have to plan your time more effectively.
Right.
Mainly because kids have a lot of things, you know, like activities and play dates in school, and you just have to figure it out. So for me, that was another, like, let's call it like leveling up. You know, like, so I leveled up at university.
Basically, if you want to effectively spend time with your kid and do your career stuff, you have to plan it. You can't just kind of roll with the punches.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to figure it out pretty quickly. And it is a real blessing. It's just like a different, you know, it's a lifestyle shift.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, that was when I truly became an adult.
Right.
You know, because your responsibilities no longer lie within yourself. You're now responsible for looking after another human. And that is a big eye opener.
Your personality definitely changed quite a bit after having Riley.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's no longer just about you. You have to look after, you know, your daughter and your family. And now it's like, okay, where are we going? What's the plan?
Yeah.
But there's been a, like, not ideal. I've always wanted to be a dad. That's been, you know, I've always been great with kids. I think that's why I've always coached sports, and like, even like at family reunions or get-togethers, like, kids kind of tend to gravitate towards me. So it's like, maybe it's my, you know, maturity level, or just like my sense of working, you know, like, it just,
you guys are on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm now teaching elementary PE, which is, I feel, is my sweet spot.
Right.
The middle school and high school, like, kids don't want to do PE. They have so much attitude and they're lazy, and like, it's not me.
Right.
Like, I was so driven, and I guess the school that I teach at is it's a more affluent school. So generally speaking, the kids come from a more wealthy background, and they have it made, you know, another lack of another term. But I came from two, you know, like, my mom and my dad weren't together. So like, single parenting is very hard.
Yeah.
And watching your parents both work really hard, like, you just kind of adapt that, you know, nature.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to see, like, people being lazy in that, because it's like, if you want something, you have to go and get it.
It's just tuned
you know?
into your
Yeah. So watching both parents, like, have that mentality, it's like that is adopted, and you just carry that on into life. But yeah, going back to teaching a little bit, it's like that for me. It's like, everyone's like, oh, you know, the gym's kind of kicking off now, like, why are you still teaching? It's like, I don't think there's many people in the world that can say that they love their job.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a single day where I don't leave work with a good laugh.
Right.
You know, like, and you make connections with the kids, and at dinner every night, my wife and I, we ask, like, what was your glimmer? It's like, what was your highlight of the day?
Yep.
And kind of what was something that you wish that you could have done better. So it's like two things, or what could you redo?
Yeah.
But the glimmers are often like something that happened at school or with Riley. It's some child related.
Yeah. Well, they say at workplaces the highest determining factor to enjoying your job is not money or time spent. It's feeling like what you're doing is important. Like, so having a purpose in your job. So if you feel like you're impacting the kids, that level of importance is extremely high, right? So the likelihood that you're going to enjoy your job if you feel that way is just through the roof.
Yeah. And there's like, I love sports. Like, we grew up playing every day in the neighborhood. Like, we'd make up sports to playing actual sports, or,
Yes,
we were very active. So it's like, that's a big part of my life. Like, whether you're playing in a structured league or just playing pickup in the neighborhood or whatever, like, that is an important skill, not just like to keep you physically active, but like a social skill.
For sure.
Like, so a lot of my friends share those same backgrounds, and going to university, like being able to jump on a baseball team, that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't playing sports.
Right.
And then being able to just jump into rec leagues and meeting new people and like making different connections, like, it's pretty cool to be able to just like, and that's what I try to say to a lot of the kids. Is like, like, one of my principles was like all about the why. So that's kind of stuck with me. Is like, why are you teaching this? Like, if you can't answer that question, then you probably shouldn't be teaching it.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
So I talk a lot about the why now. And a lot of the sports that we do in our program are offered in Cayman. So it's like, the why is like, okay, we've done this unit in baseball. The league registration starts in a week and a half. Like, if you're interested, you can play.
Right. And now you're creating opportunities for these kids.
Exactly.
To not only perform in sports, but all the other aspects that come in with it, right? Like all the social aspects, learning to work as a team, leadership, all these things that come into sports. You're opening doors for them to do that, right?
Yeah. And I'm pretty honest with my kids. I feel like that's why I have a good relationship with them. It's like, we talk about, obviously not in depth about what we've just talked about, but, like, explaining that a lot of the friends that I've met have been through sport. And when we go somewhere, everyone's like, oh, well, you seem to know everybody here. It's like, no, I played basketball with them, or played baseball, or touch rugby, or Gaelic, like, it doesn't matter, but that's how you connect with people.
Sure.
And the people that you're playing with, they're teammates, but outside of the league, you see them there. It could be like a partner at Maples, or director of finance at Dart, or, like, you don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to the point that my mom made growing up, is like, your first you should always carry yourself in a way that when someone sees you, like, this is who you are, know, like, so if you're going around like a belligerent asshole, like, that's someone's perception of you, like, if that's what you're like on the sport field or whatever, like, that's their interpretation of who you are, and it could be completely different. So it's important to kind of carry yourself with respect and humility, so that, that kind of carries on. So if you do bump shoulders with someone in a business setting, you're like, oh yeah, we played, so-and-so or this and that. It's like, you've already made that bond with someone. So then when you get into kind of business, it's a lot easier because you already have that trust and that relationship built.
And those relationships evolve as you play those things, right? Like, I think our relationships growing up in TG, if we weren't playing basketball every day at my house afterwards, or making up games in your yard, playing football or whatever, the relationships don't grow the same way, right? Like, they just, the bond grows tremendously through doing those kinds of things. Yeah.
Because you kind of just learn traits of someone, and also, like, a big thing. The reason I loved rugby so much is like, it was very much that you had to rely on your teammates, to be successful, and it was very close to like to war.
Yeah.
Like, so 7-on-7 on a 70-meter field. If someone doesn't have my back, like, I have to trust that you're there. And if you don't have my back, like, we're going to fail.
Yeah.
So, and then that comes into like communication. Someone's saying to you, I don't have to worry about this because you're saying to me, I've got your back. So now I can forget about this and
Focus on
focus
task
on
at
what's
hand.
in front of me
Yeah.
and my job, so it sports do relay a lot, to business.
For sure. For sure. I've always felt that way, especially anything involving sales or entrepreneurship. The parallels are like they never end. There's so much that are the same.
Yeah. I forget what we were
So
talking about.
where
just now.
where we started and we kind of off tracked it is once you left Triple C, you were doing the real estate. What is the career path from real estate to dabbling into business?
Dabbling into business. My mom has always had a gym in the house. Like we've always had equipment. She had a big house, and she's probably the most qualified trainer on island. If I had to say, like, if you were to just look at qualification on a qualification basis,
Right.
she's like Pilates on the reformer, aqua aerobics instructor, Pilates on the mat, like every Pilates thing that you could get.
Yeah.
Plus your national, her NASM certification. She's got a lot of them. She just never practiced them, but like just with like friends or doing stuff at home is more like for her knowledge, I guess, but she never pursued that. But I had a certification. She had a gym in her house. So we started training out of the house, and the lady I was working with at the time, she was also a personal trainer, and she started working out of my mom's house, got the business license and the permission to switch the house to a commercial residential. And that kind of kicked off. It was challenging because we were further out of town, and a lot of people, work in town. So people were having to come out of their way to come and train there. And the lady that I was working with, Trina, she is very good at what she does. She used to do all kinds of competitions and stuff, and she's really good at training. And, obviously new parent, real estate, just opened this gym, and like trying to co-parent with someone that you don't really know and running the snow cone business. It was a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So she's making recommendations on what we should be doing with marketing and this, and there's this space for rent, and it was just like I couldn't do it all.
Yeah. Too much on your plate.
Yeah. And she ended up renting a place and opening her own business on 7 Mile with a place that she had like recommended. She wanted to do it together, obviously didn't have the time, so that kind of broke off there, and she was doing her own thing. And for me, I didn't have time to like train too many clients.
Yeah.
Then we ended up selling my mom's house, so there was the kind of end of that.
Great house.
Yep. And I then had to move her whole house by myself in a small pickup truck of like 20 years of crap. And she wanted to keep it all, didn't want to sell anything.
Most of the stuff in your garage?
Loads of stuff, bro. The attic, like Eric's bedroom, he was off at university. Like, she wanted to keep it all, so I moved it all into storage. And then she got an apartment or a house. Then we moved it all into her house. And then she moved from there, so we moved it back into storage. I moved that stuff like 3 or 4 times. And then all of a sudden she was like, oh, yeah, we should probably get rid of some of this stuff. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But we did get rid of it in the end, a lot of it. But the gym stuff was then stored in a facility, and it didn't really move. I ended up working for Trina for close to maybe 2 years, a year and a half or so.
Were you thinking at this time, because you're teaching still, right?
So yeah, I was still real estate, and then I found out from my professor at the university I was studying at. She was like, Cayman International School, they have a program for the advancement of Caymanian educators. So it's called the PACE program. It was really lower pay, but for me, I couldn't go and do my practicum. So like I did all my education classes and everything, but I couldn't do the practical work because that meant that I had to let go of my work for like a 3-month placement, and not make money.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do that. So I think at the time I actually got a job at the YMCA here. They partnered with the Little League, which was exciting because I was back into baseball and the program had really kind of plummeted. So my coworker at the time, Bill, and we both had good resumes and connections. So it was a one position job. They ended up hiring us both.
Okay.
That was some hard work. Just getting the field back up to where, like hunting sponsorships for teams. And that was truly just driven by passion for the sport. Because the pay wasn't amazing, but like, you're trying to
advance baseball back in Cayman.
And they were also running youth programs, and we did like a fitness program in the mornings, softball programs in the evenings. The YMCA here has done a really good job at building baseball back, because I think it's one of the most popular youth sports again in Cayman, apart from like maybe football. But that's what it was growing up here. It was like baseball is one of the big things, because JC Calhoun, he sponsored a bunch of the land to build the fields.
Okay.
He's passed away last year, but the YMCA partnered with the Little League, and they redid the fields, and it's really like a pretty awesome program now. But
is this just for reference? Is this before or after?
After I got let go, for having a baby out of wedlock. It was probably a couple months after. But my mom always jokes that everything kind of falls in my lap, and like it kind of did. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was working, doing real estate, trying to do this thing and co-parenting. And
so then what eventually made you take the leap to wanting to open up the gym as a full-time gym in a space?
Opportunity, really.
Fell into your lap?
Not really, but I started to look for places, training with Trina and teaching full-time. Like I would train clients from like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. and then I'd teach from 7:30 to 3:30. And then you'd have like a meeting or something, some transition time. And then I was teaching clients from like 4 p.m. to sometimes 8 p.m.
Okay.
And at the time I wasn't seeing my daughter as much as I would have liked to. So I saw that as, whether you could dwell on it, obviously trying to get more time and all that. But I saw that as, okay, you're not getting the time. So what are you going to do with your time? You're going to just make as much money as you can to progress yourself forward and be supportive and all that. So it was like, boom, just grind it out for, working I was at some periods of time was pretty close to, like 2 full-time jobs, but the commission scale wasn't great, so it was like, it was an incentivized scale, but I was only ever able to work a certain amount of hours because I had a full-time job, so it's like, you're always only going to make this max. And I was like, the only way to kind of advance from that is to do your own thing. And one of my clients, it's a big leap, so for probably like 6 months, I talked about, finding a space, and I have most of the equipment because it's all in storage. And my client was just basically like, stop being a little bitch and like, just do it,
Yeah. Often that is the answer.
Yeah. But it's just like, just shut up. I'm here. I'm tired of hearing you speak about it. Like, just put it into action. And to be honest, like, when you step back and look at that from like a grand scheme of thing, like, you can talk all you want, but action is what puts things into motion,
I've actually found in most situations like that, talking about it hurts you so much because it actually kind of makes you feel like you're doing it by talking about it. And if you just talk about it less and just fucking do stuff for it, it works out a lot better.
Yeah. So the space over there became available. And And actually before that, it was like, oh, this space became available and I waited too long to act on it and then it was
Right.
gone. And like there was several opportunities like that were missed. And finally the bank had closed over here. There was like 4 units available. I applied for a business loan at credit union and they were like, yeah, we got you. And like I chased them for like 2 or 3 months and didn't hear anything. And the landlord here was like, look, you said you want it. If you want it, it's going to be a deposit of at 1 month's rent for 4 units. It was like pretty substantial. I was like, I can't do that without a loan. So, we'll have to let those spaces go. And then it got down to the point where it was like 1 unit. And thankfully it was like a friend of ours, Tom, was our landlord here, and he was like, look, bro, like there's people that want this space, like if you want it, he was kind of like
holding it for you almost.
Not holding it, but he was letting me know that when someone was actually serious about getting it,
you better get in and do something.
He was like, no,
right.
These people legit, like you got to get it now. And that was like the point for me. It was like, okay, deposit is in for rent, and it's like, oh crap, like
you're in now.
Yeah, we've got to move this along here. So it's like, okay, what do I need? All right. And I had made a business plan. Actually, I have several for different things that I want to do, but they're more like skeleton plans. But then like you have the skeleton plan and you're like, okay, blah, blah, blah. You're like, we need to fluff this out into some detail here.
Yeah.
And it happened fast, and one of the trainers that I was with at another gym, he wasn't happy where we were. So he kind of came over with me. And we moved our clients there. And then one of my friends from another gym came over, and it just like
kind of
pulled
itself into place.
Yeah. So now we're at 10 trainers, and we just opened this unit for classes.
So you personal training out of one gym, classes out of the other gym.
Yeah, we do personal training and small group training, which is kind of like to make training more accessible for people, because personal training is expensive and we recognize that, but we do live in a place where, it is a pretty affluent population. But in terms of achieving your goals, unless you're very intrinsically motivated, like having a personal trainer to hold you accountable and like program for you and just like track all the things that you need to be successful, the value is there, but not everybody has the money to, pay for that.
For sure.
So when you do small group training, you essentially divide the cost by as many people as there are in your group.
With still that kind of one-on-one feel, even though there's a group there, but you're still getting that personal attention to.
And to be honest, the feedback that you get from it is it's cool because, one, you're getting training and you're sharing the cost amongst your friends or a group of people. But 2, like I find it hard to see your friends, like when you have kids or you have a job and you're doing all the things that you need to do. And now, like it's hard to carve out time to see friends regularly.
Yeah.
So you do it you get to see your friends a couple times a week doing personal training.
Yeah, if you can kill 2 birds with one stone there, it's
exactly.
huge.
So you get 2 hours of your week or 3 hours of your week, depending on how many sessions you're doing. See your friends, get to have a little banter, and you're also like, it's healthier than going for drinks on a Friday or an evening, and then riding off your next day potentially.
It's definitely, depending on your group, good motivation too. I know if I were to go to the gym by myself versus when I come here with you guys, and I know, well, JJ's going to be watching my push-ups, and if I don't go all the way to the ground, I'm going to hear about it.
Yeah. And it's just, it is good. And you push each other, like training in a group, there's so many advantages to it. But the second space, the timing of it, maybe not so great. But again, Tom was like, I know you've been looking for another space because people are asking about classes. And it's like, all right, cool. There is a space available. The timing was right alongside of our wedding. So a lot of expenditure was already going out. And I was just like, I don't want to lose the opportunity. So I took the space. It was going to take some time to gut it out because it was like 8 different units in here, so like subdivided, so they had to gut it.
Yeah.
Took some time. I was like, oh yeah, it'll be maybe a month or two. Literally like a week, the guys came in here and just cleaned up the place, and they were like, all right, it's ready. And I was like, oh geez, all right.
We're ready to rock.
Yeah, so I had to then again, all right, boom. The support of my family has really helped a lot. So both my parents have helped out with like kind of getting things up off the ground, to which I'm very thankful for. But it's not what I thought it would be. You know, like, okay, we're opening classes, and you think like people are going to be coming flooding through the door, but a lot
There's
more
work that goes into it.
it. It's like finding people to run the classes and having enough classes to make sure that someone can make a living, and also like providing an affordable price point that is more lucrative than maybe other gyms.
Yeah.
And what product do you offer? Again, had skeleton plans about it, but it's
different when it actually happens, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because we're lucky to live in a place where it's a very active community. Loads of sport opportunities, loads of gym opportunities and places you could train, different styles of training. But for me, I think it was trying to create, like, I don't like to think about what I do when I go to the gym.
Yeah.
I like to have that done for me, so that you can literally just rock up and train. So our program is, I would say, pretty fully comprehensive. So you have 2 strength days, 2 kind of like cardio hit days, and 1 like mobility recovery day, and then like a bonus day on Saturday if you maybe miss a session or just want an extra top up. You know, one of my coaches used to say money in the bank. You know, every time you finish a hard training session, you just be like, money in the bank, money in the bank. It's like, true.
Should maybe call that Money in the Bank Saturdays.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. But yeah, it's again, the PT side of things, almost the trainers are like their own subcontractors.
Right.
So they're kind of doing their own business and kind of paying you rent in a way.
Yep.
So it's a little easier to manage.
Yeah.
And I say easy very lightly. It's not easy running your own business, but the class side of things, that takes more marketing and then takes more money, you know. And it is a lot. So we're going to spend some time trying to market that better this year, because it is really just launched. So it just takes time for people to, one, recognize the name, and then kind of what you do.
Word of mouth is huge in Cayman too, of course, like getting that recognition out there, people understanding that there's a gym here and whatnot. It takes a little bit of time for it to get across the community, right? So there's obviously a little bit of lag. Knowing that marketing was one of the kind of hurdles that you reached later on that maybe you weren't expecting to have to put in so much effort to, what are some of the other things that you didn't realize before opening the gym was going to be a problem that turned into something you had to get across?
The day-to-day, I guess. Like, for example, today, I had to paint a door. I had to replace an exhaust fan, and like, these are things that I've not done before,
right.
And I don't want to pay someone a few $100 to come and do that. So you just have to figure it out. And I think, again, self-reflecting and looking at the life I had growing up, one of the skills that I didn't really value until now is like every summer. So my mom is one of 4 girls. She's from Chicago, and all her sisters and family lives in Chicago. She was like I don't know, I'm going to say the ugly duckling, but like the black swan. Do you know what I mean? Like where you just like kind of carve your own path.
Miss Karen, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. He just called you the ugly duckling.
Yeah, no, but she just like she blazed her own trail.
Right.
You know, my family lives very close in a community, and she decided to move away at 19 to an island that she didn't know and never came back.
Yeah.
You know, so one of the things when she had kids was she promised her mom, my grandma, that she'd always bring the kids home for the summer and the holidays. So I spent my summers up there, oftentimes like playing baseball, but a lot of time was just like messing around with the cousins and riding go-karts and doing all the things that you can't really do here.
Yeah.
But my grandpa, he was an electrician by trade. He also had his own business. He had a trucking company, and he is arguably one of the most like frugal people that I know. But he, like, for reference, he would get a hole in his jeans and he would just put a piece of duct tape on it. And he did not care.
Good to go.
About, he would go out in public. It doesn't matter, like, oh yeah, okay, cool. You know what? Big old hole here. Let me just slap a piece of duct tape on it. Good to go. But he would not pay anyone to do something that he could figure out for himself. So electrician by trade, driving trucks and stuff in the evening, was just working all the time.
Yeah.
But still would come home and like, he used to wrestle in high school, I guess. So he would come home and like wrestle and just roughhouse and like teach us how to do stuff. And when we got older, it was like he would purchase properties, and they became rentals, but he would do all the work himself to like kind of fit it out, get it out. So oftentimes it was like, okay, we need to put a new chimney on this house, or they're going to run some electrical here and there. But like those skills have ended up helping me here save a lot of money. So like I would have never been like, oh yeah, let me just replace that exhaust fan. But he was like, no, we can figure that out. It's like, like my grandma would be like, oh yeah, we need to call someone to come and fix that. He's like, no, let me just try first.
Well, and that mentality goes a long way of just the like, I feel like I can figure it out. You know, I don't need the skill set necessarily, but that ability to figure things out is like, okay, I believe in myself enough to go find the skill set and do it. Yeah.
And I feel like that's the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing to overcome in starting the gym, is just believing that you can.
Yeah.
And even in like going back to sports, like it wasn't until later in our athletic career that as a small nation that we actually believed that we could be successful.
Right.
So you go into a tournament playing teams like Mexico or some kind of all-star team from Canada, and you go into the game already thinking that you can't do it, and then you lose. Where later in our careers, when we're a little bit older, it's like, these guys are just like us, and we can beat them.
Yeah.
And we are going to beat them. And then we started beating teams, and being top of the Caribbean and being more successful. But it starts from your mindset. It's like, you can do this.
Yeah.
You just need to do it. And that's why I think the best slogan is Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, that belief in yourself goes a very long way. I had similar experiences with the Cayman national ball hockey team. The first time we went away, I think we finished 5th, which was like the best we'd ever placed at that time. And I was like, well, that's as good as we can possibly get. Like, let's celebrate. And then we eventually went away and won a gold medal. So it was like, you have to build that belief. And once you do, that's just the standard you set for yourself, right? And then everything kind of just falls into that place.
Yeah, it really is. And that was like, obviously now going back to like fixing stuff and whatever, like you have YouTube. I won't even get into how many times I tried to show my grandpa YouTube so he could like learn how to do something instead of trial and error. But yeah, those skills that I've learned from him, then you can apply them into getting stuff done. But it's like all the things that happen, it's like, oh, you're teaching and you're on your lunch break and you look at your phone and it's like you have like 10 messages. 2 or 3 people are trying to sign up for the gym and they want to come now.
Yeah.
Oh no, the water's the toilet's leaking and you got to go deal with it. It's like at the time didn't have anyone to kind of call to sort those things out. You didn't have the time to do it yourself. You didn't have the money to pay someone to do it. So it's like you just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And those are the challenges that I feel like are you kind of rely on your team, and I am lucky to like surround myself with people that are really good at what they do and are very like loyal you know, so like they're willing to go the extra mile for you because you go the extra mile for them. So it kind of goes to that like phrase of like, you know, do unto others, you know. That was something that I kind of learned from my mom, is like she kind of overextends herself a lot, you know, and puts herself out there for the betterment of others.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you getting out of this? You know, but the people that work for her like really value her personality and who she is. So they're willing to go the extra mile for someone like that, where versus like someone who's like doesn't care or doesn't ask about your life and you're getting minimum wage. And not saying that money is a big motivator, but you know, when you have bills to pay, like
Yeah,
it is, you know.
for
So if
sure.
you're someone's paying you more than they need to for a certain job because they value you, and you receive that praise, or you know, get an extra bonus, or your boss like does something that goes out of their way, like you're gonna return that.
Yeah.
It's like good karma, you know. So you put it out there for someone and they're willing to give it back for you. But you know, it people's a big one.
Yeah, not even just in a karma sense, but building those relationships and, you know, having people believe that you would do for them what you're asking for in return goes a long, long way.
Mhm.
You know, like I don't think you could ask any of our friend group to come help something with the gym that we wouldn't do. But partially that's because we know that in the same situation, if we asked you, you would also come.
Yeah.
Right. So like that pays massive dividends at whatever stage you're at.
It does. And that's also been a tough learning lesson for me, is like overextending myself. I would probably consider myself what you call like a yes man.
Right.
You know, you just, yeah, absolutely. You know, like I'll be there. And then when you get to the weekend and you've got like 8 different plans and they're overlapping, it's like you're then trying to get it all in because you're trying to appease everyone.
Right.
Where sometimes you just have to say no.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, sorry, I can't make it.
And I guess that's the balance between the two, right?
Yeah. But yeah, it's I can't remember where I was going with that.
It's a common
But
theme.
yeah. No. But it's been good. Oh, people, that's where I was going. It's
Yeah.
like good, surrounding yourself with good people. I think that's the most important thing. Is to just not like, you know, if this isn't a right fit and you don't feel that it's right, then don't do it. You know, kind of
Yeah.
the opposite of the just do it. Don't do it. But one, like if you have one moldy fruit in your basket, it's just going to spread across your whole basket, and then your whole thing is spoiled.
Yeah.
You know, so, but you remove that one spoiled fruit and you have a basket of healthy fruit. So you just have to make sure that you have the right people in place and you're working with people that you care about and they care about you, and all you can do is grow.
Yeah. So what that basically gives most of the story about, you know, how you get to where you are. What do you want next from the gym? So you're kind of early stages, but you've got 2 spaces now. You've got classes on one side, you got personal training on the other. What does growth look like for the gym if everything were to fall into place the way you want it to?
I think for me, my mom got me a trainer growing up mainly because she wanted me to be successful in sport, and she saw that was my passion. But it's a real life skill, you know, like just like cooking food and understanding how to look after yourself. Like, it is something that is going to give you longevity of life. And if you look at the top health problems in the world, at least in the Northern American region, it's like all to do with your lifestyle. So like diabetes, being obese, all of these things, you can't physically do the things that you want to do in life. And for me, having the mentality that I have and wanting to be the best that I can be all the time, like I want to be able to play sports for as long as I can. I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to be a granddad one day and be able to, you know, jump on the trampoline or play, you know, like coach baseball or football or whatever the kids are interested in.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see, as, you know, people get older, you see that they're, at least from my perspective, when I've watched my grandparents or family members, as soon as they stop doing stuff, that's when you see the real regression.
Yeah.
So a
That
body
muscle
in
atrophy and-
exactly.
yeah.
A body in motion stays in motion, but as soon as you stop moving, you lose your muscle, you lose your cognitive function, because there is
It's
a
all tied
big
together. Yeah.
relationship between like activity and your brain. And that's when you really start to see the regression. So I love Cayman. Like, it's a beautiful place. It's changing a lot. But you want to kind of give back to the community. So a lot of what we do, obviously we do personal training, which is not necessarily accessible to everyone, but that's why we do small group training. So instead of paying, $75 a session, you could pay like $30 a session and split that, or
Yeah.
$25 a session to share that. Or you could do classes, and it works out. If you're coming regularly, it could be less than $10 a session, but
Yeah.
and you don't have to think. You rock up and you're working on yourself, and it's an investment in yourself for the later parts of your life, which you don't really think about until you're older and it's too late, you know? So, I mean, it's not really too late, but
It gets a lot more
lot
difficult.
harder to get back into it when you are really so far behind. Like, to be honest, I can even feel it. So like for me, if I was like, didn't do anything for 2 or 3 months, I could get back on it and be within where I need to be within like at least a month,
Yeah.
Where now I find it a little bit more challenging to get back into the game.
I feel it too. And it's,
older.
It makes you imagine at 50, 60 what it must be like, right? If we're already feeling it now.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's trying to provide something. Like, the goal when we first started classes was trying to offer things that aren't already offered, but some of the classes we were thinking it was trying to do some low impact training for people like my parents. So my dad had hurt his back, and then he wasn't able to physically work in his warehouse anymore, and then like his physical state has kind of quickly disintegrated.
Yeah.
So it's like working with the TRX instead of doing a squat, like a supported squat, to then build up to a body weight squat, to then maybe actually lifting some weight, so that you can have a little better quality of life later on.
So I guess one of the goals would be like creating a space for people
to feel comfortable training, because like you go to the gym, if a big commercial gym, there's tons of people, you may not necessarily know what you're doing, but a lot of people in there do, and you feel overwhelmed, and people are judging you and watching you do stupid stuff, like maybe like
it can be embarrassing if you don't already know the routine.
Exactly.
Even when I got back in the gym for the first time after a few years, it feels the same way. You feel like everybody's got eyes on you because you don't know exactly what you're doing. So I'm sure at an older age it's even worse.
Yeah, and most classes are geared towards like the fit or population. So to then be someone who's unfit or older to go join a class that is a bit out of your league, when you're trying to get people into the gym, you're trying to eliminate barriers of entry. So one being cost. So we're pretty low, if not the lowest, like option on island for group classes.
Yep.
And then smaller class sizes means that there's less eyes on you. We've tinted out the windows. Nobody can see in here. So you get a more private experience.
A little bit more comfortability.
Exactly. And then the small group training, like, you are with your people. So now you're joining somewhere with someone. It's a lot easier to bring a friend or to do it with 2 friends than to go in on your own. Like, not everybody can have the mental strength or, to do that.
Yeah.
So just trying to provide that. The goal, I guess for me would be also to like start to reach out to sports teams. Like, I'm very passionate about sports. So it's like, I think one of my, I don't want to say favorite client, but it was a younger kid who had specific goals for his sport.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be a better athlete. So it was like for me, it was like I could see my former self in him trying to succeed. So then you're like, okay, let me give you everything that I've got to help you be successful.
It's very rewarding to see
Caymanian.
that sort of direct impact that you can have, right?
Yeah. And again, I'm really like playing for your country is it's a really great pride.
Agreed, yeah.
And you want to see your country at the highest level that you can, which is why it's really cool to see Jordan Crooks absolutely smashing it.
For sure.
And other like track athletes now like going on to compete at the national level and international stages. You know, like our swimmers are great.
Yep.
You're kind of, I guess,
Justin Hastings, golf too, going to the Masters.
There's so many athletes now that are like getting out there and going for it.
Yeah.
But what I'm noticing is that they're individual pursuits. And that's
collectively, Cayman isn't supporting quite the same level that you'd expect for.
Well, it's not only that. It's like that's what some of the struggles that you felt growing up was. You need, as a team sport, you need all these people to have the same mentality as you to then go, you know, like where like in Canada, you might have a few hundred people in your class, where here you have got like 25. And if you're at a smaller school, you might even have less.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're relatively athletic, you're the big fish in a small pond immediately.
Yeah.
So it's like you need competition, but
there is pros and cons to that though. I've thought about that a lot. Like now that we're kind of past our athletic primes.
Whoa.
You know, like I wish I would have been able to go away and play semi-pro or play college sports. But at the same time, I wouldn't have had the exposure to playing two different national teams.
True.
And the national pride, like you said, that you get from that. It's very different experiences. Like, I don't think either of us would have played for Canadian or U.S. national teams, right?
I don't know.
However, you know, it's different. I don't know. I don't know if one is more beneficial than the other, but it is nice to have that national pride and playing for something from such a young age, you know.
But I think that's kind of what the driving factor is for me, is like I don't necessarily like the gym is part of it, but I think the larger goal for me personally is to help the Cayman Islands sports programs to be more successful.
Right.
Because for me at 15, you know, there's a lot of things going on in your life at that time. There's a lot of changes. You're in high school, you know, you're trying to find like who you are. And there's a lot of external influences that can impact or maybe be at your detriment. So here, like when you don't have activities to do, you're going to start drinking or smoking or partying, you know, like
it's getting into trouble.
Yeah. And that's very easy to do when you don't have other things to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like at that age, there's not a whole lot for you to do, you know? So
sports is a huge outlet for kids here if they take it seriously.
But not even if you don't even have to take it seriously, just having rec leagues
to
just play in, you know, and rather than having to go to a party and drink and smoke to be cool, like imagine playing in a co-ed sports league where like the girls are looking up to you because you're the guy on the volleyball team who's like smashing it, or you're the girl on the football team who's striking in all the goals for your team, you know, like those are
fair to say, like you want to have an impact on pushing the culture forward towards sport and whatever else comes with that.
Absolutely. And then part of it being like offering a training facility, because that was the big thing for us with our rugby program was when we got a strength and conditioning coach, we were then the top of our...
I was going to ask that, like, would you like to become somewhere where potentially you could have sports teams use this facility as strength and conditioning?
Yeah, we could operate now as what we have now. We could do that. And with the trainers that we have now, we could absolutely do that. But I think growing larger, you know, like you can have more teams coming at any given time. But the transition from us being like poor on the level of our, not poor, but we weren't the greatest in our area. And then when we got an S&C coach, we were then qualifying for the Hong Kong Sevens and we were top in the Caribbean. So it's like those two things relate, So taking Cayman sports, if you want to be elite, training like an elite athlete,
Right.
So running sports programs, I think, is a big one, and offering solutions to that gap, I suppose, and then also providing more specific training for sports themselves, if you want to be elite. But it starts from like a larger scale if you want to. So for example, for me, one sport that I think Cayman could be really successful in is beach volleyball. It's in the Olympics. It requires 2 people.
Yep.
And there is no twos beach league on island.
Yeah.
To me, that is absolutely ridiculous.
For sure. And there's no barrier to entry to that. It doesn't cost much. You can train all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like we need to have a twos league, a junior league maybe, where you've got like 4 to 6 kids on the team. You're learning the skills, and it builds up to a twos adult league.
So would you like to, maybe as an extension of the gym, be creating some of these leagues? Is that the goal, or are you just hoping that those things kind of come to fruition as you're building out?
I think that's kind of another venture,
Yeah.
which is in kind of the works, to create rec league sports for not just kids but for adults.
Yeah.
Because like again with the baseball program, it falls off at 15.
Yeah.
So, and there's no adult league. So it's like, hello, if you have an adult league, the kids have something to at least play in. It might not be the best level of baseball, but it's going to be better than not playing.
Yeah, just providing an outlet whatsoever is good, right?
And provide a league that has stipulations that, okay, we've got these, 15-year-olds, 3 of them are pitchers, here's a first baseman, right fielder, whatever. They play those positions, and the adults fill the rest of the positions. And I think that's kind of a start, and hopefully that when kids see that there are teams to go and play for, they can continue playing, and they don't have to go away to boarding school to go and play, which is maybe one of the driving factors for parents to send their kids off school.
I think probably, the opportunity to go continue sports, if their kids are any sort of athletic and have dreams of continuing that, you kind of have to at some age point here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but even I know from the basketball standpoint, anyone that was like top of our level when we played junior national team for basketball, they'd send them away to finish their high school in the States because that was their only opportunity to really get any conditioning properly, and B, to have any eyes on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but if there was better facilitated leagues here and proper conditioning, then you might be able to also start getting scouts to come down, right?
Or running leagues here. We're a big tourism industry. Start actually hosting tournaments where people come to us. We're in the middle of the Caribbean, a destination hotspot.
Well, I mean, we just started doing the NCAA tournaments here, right? Like that's a beginning stages of that, but exactly.
Start hosting, or like, again, going back to baseball, like we're in the middle of the Caribbean where some of the best baseball is played, in Central America, South America, and like Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Those places are not Cuba.
Yeah.
They're not far from us. So start hosting a tournament.
Even
here.
Caribbean to start, yeah.
Yeah, and grow from there. So like you don't have to go away, but I think part of that is having somewhere for people to come and stay for a cheap price, because Cayman's not cheap. So it's like you need somewhere like a hostel or something for people to come. So it takes a team to get that going. So it's not something, maybe one day where you're making a ton of money and you can throw at it, but I think it's going to take more of a community push. You need government backing to build these facilities, and maybe some private funding to finance the facilities and the programs, or maybe even hotels and accommodations that can maybe subsidize some of the rates, or offering these things at off-peak times to at least get people to stay there, and provide jobs during a slower time of the year.
Well, there's also probably so much unrecognized talent because there isn't avenues for these things, right? Like there's probably a lot of kids that could pursue sports that don't because of that. And if there was that availability, we would probably be pooling from a bigger resource of talent in Cayman, right?
Yeah. I also think you have to level things. Like in in our PE lessons, you don't necessarily pair everyone the same. So like you kind of level the class. So like those that can, it's like anything, even teaching. You know, like your goal is like the middle, and then you plan for an extension and like a support part of your lesson.
Yeah.
So like you kind of level them that way. But if you put an even team together with one elite, two maybe average, and one who needs support, that kid who needs support is probably never going to touch the ball. You know, because the elite is going to try and do everything themselves and maybe incorporate some of those that are quote unquote average.
Right.
Whereas if you put all of those that need support in a group together, they're all going to get more touches and they're going to work together and develop the skills that they need to progress, you know, and then when they start to develop those skills, now they move to the next level and then they move up from there. So it's like, I think one of the big frustrations for me is like the leagues are all the same. So there's no A league and B league. It's just the league.
Right. There's no ladder division.
So we enter 2 teams. Most schools enter A and a B instead of having 2 balanced teams. But if you entered all your A teams in one and all your B teams in another, then these B teams, you know, they're B, but they're still going to develop the skills because they're playing at their level.
Yeah.
You know, and then when they feel like they're ready, if you have a good, you know, coach, they'll push you, you know, in some ways so that maybe you can be playing at that other level, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
So in essence of time, I know we don't have much time here left, but outside of career in sports, I wanted to touch a little bit on, because I think this will be an interesting topic for maybe people that watch this outside of Cayman. You have an interesting perspective, as do I, because you spent a lot of time as a kid in the States because your mom would bring you back for summers and whatnot. So you kind of saw both sides of, you know, Western North American upbringing and what it's like in Cayman. So what was it like growing up in Cayman, and how do you feel that differs from what it would have been like growing up full time in the States? There's a lot of like some of the stories of what we used to do as kids and stuff I think people would find interesting.
Well, for one, growing up here, when we were growing up, so like even in like the 90s, it was very low population, so maybe like 25,000 people, whereas now we're closing in on like 100. So the population was very small, so there wasn't a lot of people in your neighborhood. Your dogs weren't on leashes. They could be running around, you know, like, and you found different things to do, like making trails in the bush or going fishing in the canal or trying to find, you know, lobsters in a barge, or
that was the things to do for fun.
Yeah.
And for context, the dogs definitely roamed our entire neighborhood.
They did, yeah, absolutely.
Both of our dogs might as well have been other versions of us in their own little friend groups.
Yeah.
Running up and down the streets.
But like when you think about it on another level, you had to walk and ride your bike to a decent distance to another house to go and find your friends.
Yeah.
You know, where in the States, like you're in these crowded subdivisions, you don't necessarily have to go as far. We obviously did have power and electricity and stuff, so you could play games, but I feel like more of the time you were outside playing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think it's more of like a generational thing, because nowadays like kids are on their iPads and, you know, playing video games all the time, whereas we were like outside doing stuff all the time. So I don't know. Growing up on an island is a lot safer, where now when you have more population, you have more problems and you have more like issues that you have to deal with. So I don't know. I don't know what it would be like, but I know that there's more opportunity when you have more people, and that, you know, so like you're playing on your school team, then you're playing in your county team, and then your city team and travel team and all that.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like because of that small community feel though, you tend to, in my perspective at least, you tend to bond with the people around you a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like I was going to, go long distances in the heat to go. In Canada, I would ride my bike for forever and go see friends. But in Cayman, I would just kind of stay in Tropical Gardens because I didn't want to go far in the heat. And that would turn into me just showing up at your house, whether you were there or not, and maybe hanging out with your mom if that was the case. That kind of setup doesn't really... that kind of setup doesn't really happen in North America very much. And I feel like people maybe don't know that that's how things work here.
Yeah. No, it was a very small community. I feel like it's a lot different now. But to be honest, like, we live a little further out east, so you still kind of get that vibe. Like, you can walk to your neighbor's house I wouldn't necessarily let Riley go and walk on her own just because there is a lot more traffic in our neighborhood than there might have been when we were younger. And also just like with more population, there's more chance of like there being, weirdos out there that are, like they were probably around when we were younger, but because there's only 25,000 people, the statistics would just prove that there's less of them.
Yeah.
Whereas now that the higher population, there's more of them. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's
we didn't have to worry about those kinds of things. Yeah. I was more worried about where was Buddy.
Yeah, and in the middle of a roundabout.
I remember I want to touch on some of the stories of us growing up because people tend to tell me after the podcast that I should touch on them more. But I remember oftentimes leaving your house and Buddy obviously be roaming the streets and having to do circles in Tropical Gardens so he would stop following us out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, because he knew you were leaving and he didn't want to let you go, so you had to like floor it.
Full speed.
Yeah, and you'd have to look in your rearview mirror if his ears were pinned back and he was coming for you. You had to stop and turn around because he would chase you all the way.
Do a circle and try and leave him before we could leave the neighborhood.
Yeah, or just veer right, go the long way to tire him out, and then just punch it as you leave out. Yeah, forget about that.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I'd come home and the wrong dog would be on the couch. Like my mom just let the neighbor's dog in. He's chilling on our living room couch. It's like, Buddy's outside.
That's not Buddy. Yeah.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of stories.
I had to go take Crosby back from the airport shelter because he was on the runway.
Yeah, my dog would follow me in the boat all the way to like the middle of North Sound, and you're like, okay, he's gonna drown if I don't turn around and pick him up. But yeah, we could carry on with tons of stories, and I'm happy to do that. I'm just conscious that Chris is out there trying to get in here for class.
Is he trying to get in now?
He'd opened the door and then he was like looking through. So we can load up and answer some more of these questions or talk about stories whenever you want.
Sure.
Maybe podcast 2. This is obviously number 1.
Yeah, we can do an extended maybe second episode about growing up in Cayman. It's a good idea.
I think so. Maybe feature some other representatives. Of
the Tropical Gardens Collective.
Yeah. But no, cool. I just want to make sure we get him set up because he's got people coming in here in 20 minutes.
Sounds good. We can end it there.
Yeah.